Yinlin's banner coming in just under 2 days after Kuro's sudden announcement to move it forward, it seems we are going to have a second round of face-off between Jiyan and Yinlin, as their banners will inevitably be up side by side, giving Jiyan skippers one last chance to grab him up before he snapped into eternity, until he eventually reruns, I guess. This is why in this video, I'm here to give you my personal take on this seemingly difficult question, which is to skip or not to skip. Now to start things off, let's first place our attention on our Dragon General Jiyan and take a look at the things he has going for him, especially as a main DPS. First off, a lot about a power level of a character in Wuthering Waves is basically just how well you can play this character to unleash their maximum potential, and Jiyan is a lack for a better word, insanely brain dead, with his standard rotations being basically a button mash fest. This feels good, especially if you are playing on the mobile, as none of that quick swap sorcery is required for the most part, and you can easily have the best AoE DPS unit in the game right now. Also very notably, his single target capabilities is nothing to be scoffed at, and the fact that his rotation is so easy makes it so that you can reliably hit his expected DPS numbers, unlike other DPS that relies on stellar execution. For instance, if we were to compare Calcharo to him, we can see that their on-paper DPS is in fact very similar, prompting people to question Jiyan's status as a rate-up unit, but the problem with Calcharo lies in the fact that most people probably can't hit this 3 death messengers in high difficulty content to even realize his DPS while also trying to dodge. Meanwhile, Jiyan can just button mash his way to victory with both eyes closed. Furthermore, if we were to look beyond the DPS prowess that he possesses, he actually has really broken parry abilities, largely owing to his resonance skill that allows him to parry even if he comes into contact with the enemy holding a stable hitbox for 2 seconds, and similarly, his dragon animations are ideal for parrying for hitbox reasons as well. However, the best thing about Jiyan has to be his crowd gathering mechanic from his dragon, which basically carries his AoE damage for the most part. I also want to add that I think crowd gathering as a mechanic is kinda underrated at the moment, but people are starting to value it more and more, which is also the very reason why Jianxing as a support is somewhat becoming more meta, especially in the Tower of Adversity, where you face multiple spawns of units and they are usually spaced apart quite awkwardly, making DPSing them as a single target DPS quite difficult. If you tried using any of this single target DPS in those scenarios, I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about and you understand the pain of not having an AoE vacuum in those situations. On the other hand, Yinlin, which is our other subject in metal for this video, fulfills a sub-DPS role, which basically means she takes on less field time when compared to a main DPS like Jiyan. This does not mean she is by any means subpar in her damage dealing capabilities, as Yinlin is anything but low damage, especially since she deals a ridiculous amount of burst damage based on the CBT3 test, while also bringing off-field DPS as she's able to mark her enemies, allowing her teammates to proc the damage of these marks, and she contributes to the off-field damage this way. Another highlight of Yinlin is also her outro skills that buffs not just electro damage, unlike other elemental outro buffers like Danjing and Alto, but also notably resonance liberation damage by 25%, which is definitely a substantial amount. Now that I've touched on the strengths of both Jiyan and Yinlin respectively, I think it's time for us to pit them against each other to see who comes up on top. First off, despite the fact Jiyan and Yinlin's roles are not the same, allowing for direct comparisons, we can already see how sub-DPSs in Wuthering Waves are currently less common, especially if we are talking about a sub-DPS that deals significant burst damage while also being effective off-field. Mortarfi, if anyone, probably comes closest to this description, but on the main DPS front, I'm sure we can definitely find a lot of main DPS units that are similar to Jiyan, although not at the same level as Jiyan. This means that Yinlin is likely to maintain her WUWA, Queen status, while Jiyan's status as the best DPS in the game might potentially be threatened as soon as version 1.1 comes. I'm of course referring to the announcement of Changli and Jingxi for version 1.1, and it does seem they are going to be main DPS units, judging from their respective speculated Havoc and Spectral elements. Of course, this is merely speculative, and they might just both turn out to be sub-DPS for all I know, even though I find it somewhat unlikely. Moving on from that, another point of comparison between the two has to be the ease of team building for them to unleash their full potential, and for Jiyan, there's only one man he needs in his life, and that is Mortarfi. Mortar Fee perfectly complements Jiyan not just because of the 38% heavy attack outro buff, which is all his kit is about, but more so with his ultimate that desires a heavy attack spamming character like Jiyan to take full advantage of. Conveniently, Mortar Fee is also on Jiyan's banner, so outside of those people that stole my luck on the Jiyan's banner, most people pulling for Jiyan can expect to grab up Mortar Fee in the process, forming this perfect duo. As for Yinlin, her best pairing is with Calcharo even after the outro rework, as the two buffs she provides with her outro skill, 4 Electro and Resonance Liberation damage, can be utilized effectively by him. This also meant that her best pairing is locked behind another 5-star character, but that is not to say she can't be paired with others. In fact, she can pretty much pair with any main DPS since all she needs is for people to trigger her marks, and notably she can pair very well with Yuanwu even after the rework that downgraded him from the perfect pairing with Yinlin to his current state. He's still pretty decent as a pairing, providing some sustain while also dealing considerable damage with Yinlin's buffs, especially if you have him at Resonance Chain 3 and above. Furthermore, the advantage Yinlin has over other sub DPS has to be the amount of damage she herself brings to the table, so team building wise, no matter which team you add her to, she can definitely look to contribute greatly. Now for the folks debating on which of their signature weapons to grab up, I would say Jiyan is able to function much better without his signature weapon and can look towards either the standard banner 5-star Broadblade or in the Autumn Trace 4-star Broadblade from the Battle Pass, which is also an excellent replacement since it has crit rate, and you can also look to slowly upgrade it if you do plan to continue buying the Battle Pass, and this can also serve well as a Calcharo weapon if you're lacking one. As for Yinlin, String Master with the crit rate bonus and the off-field bonuses really make this an extremely good pickup and will help greatly if you also happen to have Encore, so you can use this for both of them, and I would personally think that this will be harder to skip compared to Jiyan's weapon if you were to ask me. Alternatively, something I'm also considering, which you can do so, is to skip both of their weapons and go for more characters in general, be it in Jingxi or Changli, and you can just hop onto their hype trains and just forget about the weapons all in all. Now back to the $1 million question, personally I view both Jiyan and Yinlin to be good pulling options, but I will look towards Yinlin as the one having better pull value for the long term just from a power level perspective, especially since we haven't seen where the benchmark is for the rate up main DPS units pre-Changli and Jingxi's release, and also the fact that single target DPS units should be generally better for the longer run given how the hardest sections in the Tower of Adversity is basically just made up of single bosses for the most part. Regardless though, Jiyan's advantage still lies in the fact that he's extremely easy to use, so if you're looking for a feel-good DPS, I'll 100% recommend you just to pick him up. Now speaking of the Tower of Adversity, the Hazard Zone is going to reset in under 5 days, so definitely check out this video I made over here to see how you can tackle it and grab some rewards before the reset. I'll see you guys over there. This is Corky Gachas, signing off.